Hey everyone, nice to see you. Welcome back if you've been to my channel before. Today we're going to be talking about the different kinds of things that can cost money if you go on to further study, and the kinds of support that might be available to you to help cover those costs. Let's get started. At uni or TAFE, usually you pay by subject, so you don't have to pay for your entire degree at once. You're paying by semester, by subject. The nice thing about course fees is that usually you can put them on a loan. In Australia, we have something called HELP, which is the Higher Education Loan Program. A lot of people have heard of HECS. HECS is just one kind of HELP loan. If you go to somewhere like TAFE and you want to do a diploma, you're not going to be able to access HECS. You use something different, which is called VET student loans. VET student loans has different eligibility criteria. You still need to have the same kind of citizenship requirements, but there's a requirement that you show a certain level of literacy and numeracy. And you can do that by finishing year 12, by doing a Cert 4 or higher and completing it, or doing something like a literacy and numeracy test. If you're doing university and you want to do a bachelor degree at a public institution, most universities are public, and so you can access what's called a Commonwealth Supported Place, where the government will pay part of your fees for you. If you're on a university website, and I'll chuck up a screenshot here if I can, you'll probably still see a certain kind of course fee on the website that says, $10,000 a year or $6,000 a year. That is the fee that you have to pay. That's not the fee overall. The total fee per year for you is much higher than that, but the government is paying a certain percentage of the fee for you, and you just know about the student contribution amount. That's what it's called. So that's the amount that you would put on something like HECS. You could also pay it up front if that's something that's possible for you. If you pay, I think it's $500 or over up front, you get a 10% discount on the amount that you have paid. So not on the total fee that you owe that semester, but on the amount you've paid, you get 10% off, which, can make a difference. If you go to a private provider, so somewhere like maybe Bond University, Torrens University, both those unis are private unis, you wouldn't use HECS, you'd use something else called FEE-HELP. FEE-HELP is similar to HECS, but might have a loan fee. At Bond, there's no loan fee for using FEE-HELP, but at some other private institutions, there is a loan fee, and it's 20 to 25% of the amount of money you put on your loan. So it's pretty big. University fees at private institutions are also quite a bit higher because the government isn't paying part of your fees for you. You might be looking at $50,000 to $100,000 for a degree, which might cost you maybe $20,000 to $50,000 at another university. So it's really good to look at fees and consider them when you're making a choice about where you want to study. SSAF is a really small amount of money per year. It's usually about $320 for a full-time student, and it's prorated. So if you're doing part-time study, so 2 subjects per semester, then it wouldn't be $320, it'd be $160 instead. It's half the cost. SSAF is a fee that has to be used by the university for services for students. The universities have to publish how they use their SSAF fee. They have to consult with students in how they're going to use this year's fees. So you can have a look on your uni website and see what they've used it for in the past, and then you'll usually get a survey to say, hey, what do you want us to use SSAF on this year? What's important to you? So that's really cool. For example, I was at ACU the other day, and there I came across like an outdoor fitness area, and there was a sign that said, this was SSAF funding that made this possible, which is super cool. SSAF can be used for things like health services, medical services, student spaces, different kinds of events and programs to help students. So it's always used to help students. You have a separate kind of loan that you can put SSAF on, which is called SA-HELP. So when you do a HECS-HELP form on your university website, you also often do an SA-HELP form to put your SSAF fees on HELP. When I first started university, which is a while back, I had to buy a lot of textbooks, and I didn't realize that you could buy them secondhand, so I bought like $1,000 worth of textbooks for my first semester. It was me just not knowing that there were other options out there. So part of the reason I want to make this video is so that someone else who's maybe going to uni for the first time and doesn't realize that like secondhand textbook sites exist, that you can buy textbooks from students who are further through your course that you can look on Gumtree. There's lots of different ways to get secondhand textbooks, and it can make a considerable difference to the cost of your course resources. Yeah, so that those people know that, unlike me. If you want to buy textbooks new, of course, do it, but usually you can get the same resources at a much better price if you buy them secondhand. Some universities just have all their resources online. It's always good to double check before you go and buy something in a hard copy. Can you actually get that book online through the library for free? If you can, then you might not want to buy the textbook. You can just use it online. And some of the courses I've done in the past, I've bought the hard copy textbook, even though I could get the textbook online, because I knew I preferred to read a hard copy book. I found it harder to keep track of things in an online textbook. Think about your personal preference. The other kinds of resources you might need for your course, aside from textbooks, are things like uniforms. If you're doing a course that has a placement component in it, or where you're expected to do like clinic hours, for example, allied health courses, you often have to buy a uniform that your university makes. You often have to pay for things like vaccinations so that you can go and work in health services. You might have to pay for CPR and first aid. You might have to pay for a police check. Depends on the university and the course that you're doing. A lot of the time, if you're doing a course where you have to work with children, so anyone under the age of 18, you'll have to get a blue card. If you're doing placements, then the blue card won't cost you any money because it'll be for a volunteer. And it's good to have a look. Some universities will actually have a list of some of the things you might need to get as a part of enrolling in that course. Always check the course information on your university's website in depth before you start uni, so that you can check, okay, what sort of stuff might I need to do before I get there. A lot of courses have placements built into them now. Even if you don't think my degree will have a placement, you might be surprised. You might have a chance to do something like what they'll call work integrated learning, which is a chance for you to go out, do a placement in a real world organization, and put your skills into action. For example, I was talking to someone who'd recently graduated from a kind of creative degree, but she'd chosen to do a placement in that degree so that she could get some industry connections and some work experience, and she learnt heaps from doing that. So I would always suggest jumping in and taking up the opportunity to do work integrated learning, even if it's not compulsory in your degree. If you're thinking about doing placement, either compulsory or voluntary, you have to think about like how many hours and how it might impact on your income. Placement can mean that you have to take time off work. In one of the degrees I did, I had to do like 2 really large placements. I had to take a bunch of time off work, and I had to save up before I went on placement so I could, keep paying rent and buying groceries and things like that while I was on placement. The other thing with placement is sometimes you can access some financial support from your university. For students who want to do a placement in a rural area, the university might offer bursaries to help cover the cost of going out to the rural area. They might offer free accommodation for you. For example, some students who do placement in Cherbourg will get free or subsidised accommodation in Cherbourg while they're on their placement, which is awesome. Exchange involves going usually for anywhere from a couple of weeks to 2 semesters overseas and studying at a different institution, or going and doing some work experience in another country. And so in the same way that placement might mean you can't do the same kind of work you've been doing while you've been studying, exchange really limits you because you're going to be somewhere completely different. So you're not going to have the same kind of income, and you probably don't have the same support systems that you would have if you were still in the country. So it's a really good idea to think about saving up for an exchange. You might still be able to access some kind of financial support from your university. But the other nice thing to know about with exchanges is that you can access something called HECS-HELP, which is another kind of help loan. If you're in a Commonwealth Supported Place at a public university, then you can usually also access HECS-HELP. And HECS-HELP is for students who want to go on exchange and would like a bit of financial support. You borrow some money from the federal government to help your exchange. You can borrow usually between $7,000 and $9,000, depending on where in the world you want to go. And there's a little bit of extra money available if you want to go to the Asia Pacific region, because the government would like more people to be studying in that region, building connections there. And you can actually also access a little bit of extra money to do some language study if you want to go to the Asia Pacific region, so that you can, chat to the people that you're actually meeting while you're over there, which is awesome. If you're studying full-time, you might be able to access something like Youth Allowance or Austudy, which is a payment from Centrelink to try and, make it less of an issue for you to study full-time. The amount of money you get depends on whether or not you're dependent or independent. If your parents earn a certain amount of money, you need to prove that you're independent from them in order to access the independent rate. So for example, when I left home, I had to work for a certain amount of time and earn a certain amount of money in order to be proved independent from my parents so that I could access youth allowance. And it made a big difference to my studies because at least, when I first started out, I didn't have to work that much. Youth allowance, even if you're getting the independent rate, is not heaps of money, but it is going to make things a lot easier for you if you can get it. It also teaches you a lot about how to live on a budget, and it really teaches you to manage your money well. Okay, I think that's all the things I wanted to touch on today about going on to further study and how you can get support to make the cost a little bit more affordable. I've done a blog post about this with heaps of links, so if you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description, but I'll also put a lot of other links in there to the different things we've talked about today. So, maybe don't go and just buy every single textbook book listed for your course full price, brand new, right at the start. Maybe do a bit of checking to see, do you need them all? Are they available on the library? Can you get them secondhand? And then maybe, it's not going to cost you $1,000 first semester. If you found this video helpful, you might want to like it or subscribe to get similar videos in the future. And hope you have a lovely day.